If you're watching this video, that probably means you're considering an LT swap in an 80 series of your own, and you want to know how reliable this thing's going to be and what's going to break. Well, you're in luck, because I'm going to go over every single thing that has broken or I've had to fix in the last 6 months. I am not a professional mechanic, so as I go through this list, you're going to see there are some things that were 100% my fault because I installed them wrong. And there's going to be some things that if I was a mechanic and I knew better, I wouldn't have done it the same way I did it. So let me get that out of the way. I've tried to use this rig as much as I can in the last 6 months. And when I say use, I mean totally use it up and down the board. Whether that's daily driving to and from the grocery store, taking dogs on road trips for dog walks, doing road trips for overlanding, off-roading in snow, off-roading in water, off-roading in mud, off-roading in the desert, putting really big highway miles on it. I really wanted to put this thing through as many situations as I can so I can honestly give you a review of how the swap was doing and how the rig is doing. If you're one of those 80 series owners who doesn't really drive your rig that much, don't really have a chance to take it out on trips, don't really drive it every day, then these problems may not affect you so quickly, but they might affect you in the long run. And so you're going to want to stick around to see what all went wrong in the last 6 months. First item on the list is really important. It's a starter. As you can tell, this is a brand new GM starter sitting in a box so I could have as a backup, because I've already gone through 3 starters on the rig. Let me take you underneath the rig and show you why I think these starters fail and what you can do about it. Okay, right there underneath the rig is the standard location for the Gen 5 LT starter. And the way the starter works is it takes a park neutral safety switch signal from either the factory 80 series wiring harness or from Mitch's swap time harness that's plugged into the new 8L90 transmission. And it needs to see a pulse on that signal before it can fire the starter to start the car. And the 80 series park neutral safety switch signal is connected to 2 different things. Obviously the stock transmission, and it goes through a thing called a fusible link, which I'll get into in a second, but hold on to that fact. Another thing about this starter is the location is right next to the exhaust header. And you need to make sure you have really great heat wrapped wiring on these wires here, so the header doesn't melt your signal wire, your starter wire, etc. And then finally, you have to make sure you have a very big gauge wire that goes on the starter lug and it's nice and tight, so that way the starter can pull all the power it needs to start the car. I don't know where the breakdown happened, but I've already gone through 3 of these things, and this one is already on its way of going out, which leads me to think it has nothing to do with the location of the starter, because that's where it is in a truck. It has nothing to do with my Super Duty 2-gauge wire. It has something to do with the park neutral safety switch signal from the 80 series harness. And so let me take you to the top of the rig to show you what I think is going wrong. I think my issue with my starter all boils down to this right here, which is the factory 80 series fusible link. The fusible link is one of those things that Toyota engineered to fail intentionally in case there's a major issue with wiring and you're blowing past fuses, you're blowing past relays, and in order for your truck not to start on fire, they built this link here that has a fuse in it that will pop. They also built the wires that go to the fusible link a lot smaller gauge than these wires here. Those are also designed to melt and pop and disconnect, so there is no power going to the rig. Well, in order to send a completed loop of power, the fusible link has to pull power from the battery, go through the harness, go through the park neutral safety switch, then open a relay, then start the car. So I really think the fusible link could be an issue. Another good sign that the fusible link is going bad is my AC fans are sometimes intermittent. They'll be working for 5 minutes, I'll be driving, I hit a bump or something, and then all the fans stop working. Or my brake lights stop working, and it all comes through this fusible link. I've already addressed this once, but I don't think I did a good enough job. So that's going to be on me and somewhat on Toyota. So I think the fusible link is a big problem. Why I think the fusible link is a big problem is not that the rig is 30 years old and it has never been changed. I'm starting to take this rig places that it's not really used to going. In a very recent off-road trip with the boys, we went off-roading near Mount Rainier, and we tried to find a campsite that was past 3 or 4 river crossings. Well, it was getting late in the day, and we really wanted to make it to camp before it was dark, and we did not air down the rigs. And my gut instinct is telling me this thing was shook so hard to death that I shorted out, or I wiggled a lot of wires loose. And there are other failures in the last 6 months that support that shaking theory. Now, of course, 80 series are made to be shook and made to go through a bunch of terrain and made to do all kinds of stuff. But if it hasn't really had a shakedown in 30 years, that's when things are going to fail. And I really think that's what made a lot of my things fail. The next thing I'm going to talk about is fuel pump related issues. And it all has to do with the factory location of the 80 series fuel pump return lines after you end up putting catalytic converters there when you do a V8 swap. And so you guessed it, I'm going to have to take you back underneath the rig one more time to show you exactly what I'm talking about. Those lines right there are the factory 80 series fuel feed, return, and vent lines. And you can see the really big line here on the left, that's the feed. The medium-sized line is the return, and the tiny boy line, that's the vent line. And after doing a V8 swap, one of the challenges you're faced with is finding a route for the exhaust that comes off both sides of the engine. And that route usually means you need to put a catalytic converter right underneath those 3 fuel lines that I just told you about. And as you guys know, heat rises, and the heat from the catalytic converter goes up into the fuel lines and gets them extremely hot. On really long road trips, the fuel gets really hot and the fuel pump starts to sing. It gets really loud. In fact, I'm going to try and show a clip here of a loud fuel pump. And when it's getting loud, it's really having a hard time, A, staying cool, and then B, being efficient. And the fuel can lead to vapor lock and ruin your fuel pump. And we're going 8 miles an hour because this is really, really scary. I'm not going to go around this corner until I see Corey make it through that area. So I have a spare fuel pump. No, well, it's not in this video. It's in my office. Just in case this thing fails on me on the road, I have to replace it. Now, there are some options. I have seen some people out there put heat wrap around the catalytic converter to keep heat out of the fuel lines. And I'm not going to heat wrap my cat because it's very wet here in Washington. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen, but wet old exhaust wrap is like the worst thing in the world. And I have a big feeling that like after 4 or 5, 6 months, that exhaust wrap is just going to be destroyed in our Washington weather. The thing I'm going to try and do is wrap the fuel lines themselves with reflective heat tape and then build some sort of heat shield between the cat and the fuel lines. I haven't built it yet, but that's my best solution for factory line locations. After talking with Torfab, he had the same issue on his 80 series, and what he did was he rerouted the fuel lines with all new 6AN lines on the return and the feed from and to the tank, and that kept them from heating up from the catalytic converter. Now, I know this is super technical, but if you are going to do a swap and you are going to put a cat right next to your frame rail, it's going to heat up your fuel lines and you're going to run into this issue. And I wanted to make sure I got it out of the way before we got into anything else. Another item that failed me in the last 6 months, which kind of left me dead in the water, were the O2 sensors that I bought when we did the swap. They were not GM O2 sensors. I replaced the GM ones with these ones that I got from Amazon, and they failed on me on a road trip with my wife in eastern Washington, which is like 3.5 hours away. It got us there just fine, but the next morning when we were at camp and we wanted to drive home, the car wouldn't stay idling. It wouldn't run. It was just horrible. Luckily, I had like 1 or 2 bars of cell reception. I got on the phone with Mitch from Swap Time. Shout out to you, Mitch. Honestly, lifesaver. He remote patched into my laptop and looked at all the parameters to try to figure it out with me. And what we settled on was we could see the voltage differences on each bank of the O2 sensors, and one bank was showing really wrong voltage numbers. And so we pinned it on that. And the way I got the rig home was I put the truck in open loop saying ignore the O2 sensors, run the parameters based on the VE table, and I drove it home. I could only do that because I had something like an HP Tuners If you don't have an HP tuners and you have like an OBD2 scanner, which I think everyone should have, the OBD2 scanner will tell you that you're having some sort of P0 whatever code, and you can narrow down O2 sensors there. Then you can get yourself to the nearest auto parts store. And because of that situation, I learned my lesson, and I always keep a spare pair of O2 sensors on deck just in case this bad boy wants to throw a code or be finicky or be grumpy out on the trail. My wife and I are like 10 hours away from home, 4 hours away from home. We're not near an auto parts store. I want to make sure I can diagnose and fix the O2 sensors at any time, and so I keep a spare pair on me at all times. Just like how I keep a spare starter with me in case the factory starter goes out. And to go with that redundancy of having spare O2 sensors, I always keep the HP tuners connector in the rig with me with my laptop so I can patch in and see what's going on with the rig. This thing has been a lifesaver, but if you don't want to do all this, just bring a really good OBD2 scanner with you and you should be good. Speaking of HP tuners, one issue that I ran into with the V8 swap itself was the transmission had a couple days of really funky shifting. Like it would shift into first and it'd make a weird grinding noise. It would shift, and when it would upshift into second and third, it would make a weird like upshift, like clunkety noise. Just wasn't very happy. The 8L90 is a pretty temperamental transmission. There are fixes for it. A lot of people already make valve bodies. A lot of people already make like additives to keep it from slipping. You can also tune out a lot of that stuff in HP tuners, which I thought I did. But I think the big thing comes down to I used the wrong transmission fluid. I'm using the dealer recommended Valvoline transmission fluid, but there has been an update, much like the oil viscosity, to switch over to Mobile 1. So what I think I'm going to have to do is do a proper transmission flush, get rid of the old fluid, throw in the new fluid, change the filter, and I think we're going to be all good. So if you are going to be running the 8L90 or even the 10L80, I'm going to throw a link to the correct transmission fluid you should be using for that transmission so you don't have to run into issues like I did. Moving on to the front of the rig, one thing that failed on me recently, and I can't get it back, is the OVS Scar 12K synthetic rope winch. It's kind of hard for y'all to see in there. Here it is behind the lights. And I think the winch failed for one of two reasons. One, I think that trip that we did with the boys and I shook the dickens out of the truck. I think the wires that were holding the winch in jiggled a little bit and caused the short. But another thing that could have caused this winch to short out was all the water crossings that this thing has been through. I don't think this winch is as waterproof as they say it is, because even when I tried to replace wires, do everything, it still won't turn on. So something caused the winch to short internally, and I can't bring it back. It is pretty annoying to disconnect all the lights from the front bumper, pull it off, put it on the ground, take the winch off, put in a new one, and reconnect everything. It's going to be a long day, but we'll make it work. Another thing that has been giving me issues since day one are the Tarox 6-piston big brake kit. Brakes are one of those things that it's not a simple fix. It's not like a relay. It's not like a fuse. It's not like a loose wire. It's one of those things that it's kind of a complex system. And depending on the year, make, and model of your vehicle, brakes can get extremely complicated. The problem I was having with these brakes is the pedal just always feels super soft. No matter what I do, I've changed the fluid to .5 fluid. I've reran brake lines. I've even made my own brake lines. I've gotten rid of the ABS system. I've gotten rid of the load sensing proportioning valve. I've added a new Willwood rear proportioning valve. I've upgraded the master cylinder size to the 1-inch size, which is an upgrade for a Land Cruiser. I've purged and I've bled the lines maybe 30 or 40 times. I've probably gone over $300 to $400 worth of .5 brake fluid, and the brakes are still soft. I took apart one of the brakes down here last week, and I did see that the caliper had a little bit of drippage in between the pistons. Now, I don't know if that's mud from a water crossing or if it's fluid, but either way, not cool that these brakes are that soft after the price I paid for them. The only thing that's left for me to do with the brakes to make sure that I've gotten rid of all the issues is to replace the factory brake booster. Now, I know that some people have said that if your master cylinder ever leaked into your brake booster, you're going to have really bad brake pedal feel. And this is the third master cylinder I've put on the car. The first one was a replacement from the factory 81. Then the second one was a T100 master cylinder. That definitely leaked everywhere. And then this is the third one, which is an upgraded 80 series master cylinder for a non-ABS 80, and the front brake channel is in the front instead of in the back. So lots of changes there, and the brakes still feel soft. So I think I'm going to have to change the factory brake booster to either an upgraded unit. It definitely needs to be a dual diaphragm unit, maybe something that can handle a little bit more pressure. It seems like all the problems so far have been in the front of the vehicle. There is one problem at the rear of the vehicle that I'm going to have to get under the rig and show you. And if you are going to do a V8 swap in your Land Cruiser, this is going to come into play, and it has to do with your exhaust once again. Underneath the rear, that's the rear third member. And then this is the tailpipe from the exhaust that the original exhaust shop made. And as you can see, the tailpipe hangs down a little too low, and my yoke from my drive shaft ends up hitting right here. Now this is like extremely dangerous in so many ways. One, I didn't do the exhaust, so don't blame me, I'm going to blame the shop. But two, every time this yoke hits this exhaust, it puts pressure on my pinion bearing in here, and then eventually it's going to ruin my pinion bearing, and it's going to ruin my diff. So like that's already like extremely bad. Secondly, it could destroy the yoke and destroy my drive shaft. It could loosen these bolts in here and destroy my drive shaft, and I could lose rear wheel drive. And then thirdly, eventually it's going to like wear a hole in this exhaust, and this exhaust is going to sound like junk, and I'm going to have like a leak in my exhaust. It's going to be all bad. Like there's going to be fumes that go in the car, and it's right next to the gas tank. Like extremely bad here. And so if you are going to do a V8 swap, make sure whoever does your exhaust work doesn't carry the exhaust to its lowest point right next to your third member. Make sure the exhaust either routes somewhere where this thing is not going to hit your exhaust. It's a shame that they did this because, you know, I was super stoked on this exhaust, but the problem is now I have to go get a new exhaust made. I don't want to take it back to that same shop because I don't feel like I got that good of a deal. And so I'm going to have somebody else make me a new exhaust here. And in the meantime, I have to make sure I don't go off-roading or go over any bumps that's going to make this yoke hit my exhaust. Finally, the last thing that broke in the last 6 months, it's kind of an annoying one, but it's also very common to all Land Cruisers, is my PRN D2L lights in the middle of the dash stopped working, so I don't have any gear indicator in the dash that is working. However, I do have my gear indicator screen, so it's not that big of a deal. And the light on the factory PRN D2L shifter burnt out. And I think that has to do with a lot of the shaking and jostling on that one trip, because now I don't have a light here and I don't have lights here. But those aren't that big of a deal. I think they happen to most Land Cruisers, so I'm not too worried about it. All right, now that you've seen everything I've dealt with in the last 6 months on my V8 swapped 80 series Land Cruiser, I hope this video was super helpful, because I'm learning all this by doing. Like, there was no like TLDR, there was no owner's manual, there was no like guide to tell me what to look out for, so I'm just learning all this by doing. But before we wrap this video, I do want to give a huge shout out to my newest Patreon supporters. In the last video I made, I threw a link in there for people to download the build sheet of everything that they need to buy to do the LT swap in their 80 series. And I tried to make that sheet as detailed with live links as possible. This way you always have it, and you can just check off everything you need in the list, from engine to transmission to suspension to interior. It's all in there. Those of you who have joined the Patreon and downloaded the sheet, thank you guys so much for doing that. And as a very special surprise, I'm going to be sending you the very first Cool Guy Club 4-wheel drive Land Cruiser keychains that are 3D printed and glow in the dark. I know it's not that big of a gift, but I just wanted to say thank you in my own way. And so I had these made up. They're actually going to be a collaboration item release for a car meet I'm having here in Gig Harbor on the 28th of February. But I'm willing to bet none of you can make that car meet. So I'm going to be sending you this for free as a big thank you for joining the Patreon. If you're watching this now and then you jump into the Patreon to join at whatever level you jump in on, I can't guarantee you're all going to get one of these because I have to hold on to some of them for the car meet. However, I will do my best to give you as many as I can, and it might be enough to cover anyone else who joins on Patreon. We'll see. But that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content on the 80 series and you want to see more, drop a comment below. We do have more things coming. We have more gear coming for the 80 series, and the sun is starting to come out here in Washington, and that means, fingers crossed, more trips so we can put this thing in places that are a lot prettier than my driveway. Other than that, I'm going to wrap this video here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.